Well, good morning, everybody. Wonderful to have you all here, and welcome to 2025 Social Value Conference. I can say with confidence that it's the biggest in the world, because I think it's one of the only conferences in the world, but I know for sure that we've got people attending from all over the world watching this, as far away as Australia and across in the US and Asia. So welcome everyone to our day today. I'm really delighted to be here 1 year after we've done our 2024 conference. So much has happened. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping first. Just everything is being recorded. For those who've signed up, you will get your recordings sent through, and you'll have access to those for at least 12 months. I've got a few thank yous to do right at the beginning. If you go to the next slide, please, Tom. Our sponsors in particular, WSP, Amazon, Deloitte, and E.ON, who are our 4 platinum sponsors and been fundamental in helping us put this together. And then Accenture, Enable, Sodexo, Delta, Space Hive, and Vodafone, all fantastic sponsors. So thanks very much. Sitting behind this conference, I mean, this is rather like a swan, a beautiful, beautiful swan. Hopefully you'll agree by at the end of the 3 days, but legs under the water, paddling as fast as you can. Keep everything going. And in particular, I'd like to call out Tom, Rachel, and Ingrid, who are on the front line of managing everything, along with all of our moderators. And then finally, our steering committee have been amazing contributors to helping me put all this together. That's the Social Value Task Force Steering Committee. So I'm here with Angela Halliday. And for those who don't know Angela, she's been sort of a champion for social value for many years now. She is the Director of Social Value at Sodexo. And she's also, I'm delighted to say, a co-chair now with me of the National Social Value Task Force, which is amazing. And just for those who don't know about the National Social Value Task Force, and please reach out to us if you don't. It's a group that was set up in 2015, and it is really there to build the knowledge and share the collective knowledge around social value. It started off very much looking at procurement, but now it's thinking much more broadly about how to embed social value into everything that we do, including planning and how businesses operate, generally speaking. So if you go to the next slide, please, Tom. So why mission critical? Why are we calling this conference mission critical? And I think it plays on 2 themes. The first theme is the 5 missions of central government. This is what speaks for those in the UK, at least. The Labour Party has identified 5 key themes. And so that's the play on the mission. But more importantly, I think we can all recognise, whether or not we're in the UK or globally, we're facing some really critical issues at the moment. These are the things that I think we need to tackle. Here are 5 hard facts for you just to contemplate, and why we are tackling this now. In the UK at least, nearly 1 million young people are not in education, employment, or training. That's a staggering number. Child deprivation is rising here in the UK and across the EU faster than ever before, with 4.5 million young people, children, now living in poverty. Our prison system is operating practically at 100% capacity, 99% capacity, with just 1,000 spare cells. So there's a real issue around over capacity, and also how we support ex-offenders. Homelessness has reached unacceptable levels, I would say, with 1,600 people last year dying because they were homeless and 11 children. And then finally, the fight against climate change really seems to be getting tougher and tougher. Hottest year on record, 1.55 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, and yet many politicians are now fighting against the reality of climate change. So it strikes me that all of this is facing us and putting a real challenge in front of us. And I think it's time to say, look, we can't, as businesses, as public sector, just wait for politicians to do the right thing. We need to step up and do the right thing. Three other things that the conference is looking at: community collaboration and impact. Community, because it's at the centre of everything we do. Collaboration, because I think it's only through radical collaboration, which the task force is all about, that we're going to be able to deliver the social value economy. And finally, impact. We are, yes, of course, talking about value, social value, and it's useful to understand how many and also put a value to that. But ultimately, what we do know is that impact and social impact is all about people, place, and planet. So that's the substance behind our conference. And at this point, I'd just like to bring Angela in just for a few minutes. And Angela, a lot's happened this year, hasn't it, in the past 12 months? And perhaps you just reflect on what your key takeaways from these past 12 months that you'd like to just highlight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Guy, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this year's conference. Hopefully you'll all enjoy it. So delighted to be here, and especially so as the co-chair that Guy's just outlined. So yeah, absolutely. Reflecting on the last year, I think you've already touched on the main points, but interesting is probably one of the best ways to describe it. Not only just for the UK, but I think for the social value agenda. You know, with our new government coming in just over a year ago now, with the launch of the 5 missions, which, as we know, are very well aligned to the new social value model that was updated and went live on the 1st of October. So I think the combination of these things really gives us some good talking points over the next 3 days. So I do think the conference couldn't be any more timely.
And so, I mean, what I picked up, Angela, around the Procurement Act 23, which effectively came into effect on 1st of October, a few things that I think are really interesting that come out of it. First off, and you already mentioned the social value model, but secondly, the focus on voluntary community social enterprises. Just we've got that sort of additional element there where there's reporting required by ministers and also for SMEs, actually. And then we've got this whole issue, I think, is going to be really interesting to talk about, which is KPIs and then remedies. But social value needing a KPI. So I'm kind of interested in what your thoughts are about those two elements.
I suppose I would probably give a bit of advice, if I'm honest, Guy, that let's try not to get wrapped up too much in the bureaucracy. Stay true to who your business is. Just do some really good, some really powerful, impactful stuff for people, the planet, and the places where we're operating. And then almost the governance and the frameworks will take care of themselves. So I think being really clear around your ambitions, what you're aiming to achieve, particularly that impact piece, then the framework and the metrics should hopefully fall into place nicely. But I think sometimes we get a bit too wrapped up in the governance and sometimes often forget why we're doing what we're doing.
Okay, yeah, no, that's good advice, and I think to stay focused on that is important. I agree with you. So we've got a lot on over the next 3 days. What are you really looking forward to, Angela? What do you sort of like, I've got to see this day 1, day 2, day 3?
Well, first of all, I think making the link between last year's conference, which was social value in action, which was really pertinent to this year, where we're talking about mission critical. So that gap of the last 12 months, for me, what I'm looking forward to is hearing firsthand what action businesses have taken since last year. And obviously that will come to life at the awards ceremony on Thursday evening. But I do believe that the topics that we've got this year are absolutely reflective of the current priorities and challenges that the UK and globally are facing, not just as a country, but as society, but also for each of our respective businesses. It's been a tough year for business, regardless of what sector you sit in. And I do believe that putting or looking at your business through the optics of social value, social impact, will absolutely allow businesses to continue to grow and thrive. So for me this week, there's something for everyone. But as always, every year at the conference, it's that collaborative piece that I'm really looking forward to. Getting in a room, speaking to people, getting insight, and most importantly, learning.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm looking forward to day 3 for sure. I'm just going to reflect briefly on day 1 and day 2. I'm looking forward to hear Timpson's, who are speaking around offending. So that's going to be a good session. We've got the Premier Football League talking, and their foundation talking about how sport can change. So that's going to be really interesting. We have one of our colleagues, Jerry Green from Waltham Forest, talking about how social value can be a profit centre for public sector. And that is really interesting. How do we turn it from a cost to a business, really strong business case? And then late this afternoon, we've got a debate around how AI, artificial intelligence, could create or destroy social value. I don't know how many people have heard about her name is Delina, I think it is, out in Albania, the new minister for procurement in Albania, and she's AI generated. And it's not a real person, it is just AI. I think that whole world is going to be fascinating. And then day 2, we've got an opening with colleagues from Australia, which is going to be very exciting. We have a task force down there talking about future generations. And then we've got quite an interesting debate around place-based social value. And then on day 3, for those of you who are coming, lucky enough to come, some amazing stuff, I think, Angela. We've got Johnny O'Brien from Anthropy. We have a conversation around procurement. We've got the Cabinet Office talking. We've got a spotlight in VCSEs. We've got, as always, 3 amazing people talking about their own journeys, their inspiring stories. Izzy Everest, Jay Grange, and we've got Standing Tall. And then finally in the afternoon, we've got John Knight leading a panel discussion. John's the CEO of Together Coalition. And then finally in the evening, as you mentioned, we've got our awards, 270 awards, 12 commendation, 12 winners, 400 people coming for dinner. It's all going to be absolutely amazing, fantastic. So yeah, I think this point about that link between last year and this year is really important, Angela, and I'm looking forward to how we take that forward. So you and I are going to meet later this afternoon, on Tuesday to wrap up the 2 digital days, and then you and I are going to meet again on the stage on Thursday, which is very exciting, to wrap up the whole conference. So that's great. So looking forward to that. So thanks, Angela, for joining me for this opening round, and excited to this. And so everybody, this is what we've got online today. Lots happening. We've got 4 parallel sessions after the keynote from Chris Reed, which is going to be great. And then he's going to chair a panel looking at all-party social value. And then we've got our 4 sessions. So look online and get involved. We do actually have a networking app as well. So that networking app is on the main landing page, and you can reach out to anyone and get to meet them. So introduction over. Now let's get into it. And at this point, I'd like to invite Chris Reed, the leader of Rotherham Council, to join us. And we're really fortunate to have Chris at our last year. Actually did a fantastic opening session, and we thought we'd have to ask him again. And this time we've asked him to actually moderate a panel, or do a keynote, but also moderate a panel around cross-sector collaboration and cross-politician collaboration around social value. Chris is a politician, as far as I can make out, through and through, having started in 2004, supporting MPs in his local area. So he's been doing this for 21 years, Chris. That's quite a while. And you've been the leader of Rotherham Council since 2015, 10 years. So congratulations to that. Fantastic. The thing I've learned about Chris is he makes no secret of just how proud he is of Rotherham where he works, but he also is very, very proud to be the leader and to represent Rotherham and to be in place. And that for me is really important. There's something about all of us taking pride of place and understanding that we are rooted in country. So that's really exciting. And it was Chris's idea with my colleague Amy Hazelhurst to explore social values cross-party issue. And so with that, I'd like to invite Chris to open our conference and make his keynote address. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Guy, and thank you for your kind words. Yeah, 20 some years of doing this now. I keep thinking one day I'll get a proper job, but you never know, dear. It's a real honour to be able to open the conference for you this morning, and I'm looking forward to introducing the perspectives of our panel members in a short while, shedding some light on the different political and place-based perspectives that drive local policy. I can see in the notes that you've prepared for us that we're looking for where is the common ground. I will be equally interested to see where the differences are between us. And I'm glad to be joined by 5 of my colleagues. I think I'm right in saying, Guy, that we've gone for 5 parties because otherwise, if you look at the opinion polls, I wouldn't be able to deliver this speech. So it's very kind of you to make allowances for us at this moment in time. Look, I'm sure all the people on this call are advocates for a social value approach, for an economy that is shaped by our priorities, not just by the logic of the market. And the Social Value Portal have asked us, as I say, to speak as politicians today. So I've asked my cross-party colleagues to poke a little at these remarks in about 15 minutes' time. And I'll try to frame this in a way that I might not otherwise. The biggest challenges, I think, for any of us trying to lead in a political environment today are twofold. The first is that the way that people digest news and understand the world has changed radically in the last few years. The collapse of local media, the increasing decline of all forms of traditional news have left us frankly chasing shadows. The internet bends space and time. What does that mean? Footage of violence in one place 10 years ago is relabeled as if it was this week. The Mayor of Rotherham speaks to a community meeting and it's viewed on one X account last week 1.4 million times, with people projecting whatever intention it is that they want onto what she said. A candidate in an election is caught on a Ring doorbell. Everybody has these outside their houses now. And the video with falsified audio appears online the next day. Outrage is the order of the day and it drives clicks. And you mentioned AI, Guy, in the introductory remarks that you made there. My fear is AI is only going to make it worse. As a resident of mine said the other day, you just don't know what to believe anymore. And the second thing, which is worsened by the first, is that people's lives feel out of control. Events feel too big, forces too great, public services too impersonal. To give Boris Johnson his due, take back control was a great slogan. But do people feel like it happened? Did immigration fall? Have traditional industries revived? Is the NHS blossoming? Maybe. We were lucky enough to receive some of the government's Pride in Place funding recently in Rotherham, and we just completed a fairly significant round of public consultation. We offered a wide range of concerns for residents to prioritise the appearance of the area, the local economy, access to cultural opportunities, and so on. But the one that they responded to most strongly was the one that said, we don't feel like we have control or influence over what happens in our area. And I don't think that's just a Rotherham problem. Still think that one of the big reasons why there's such resistance to new housing developments in many parts of the country is because people feel the link is broken. They understand the risk that they will lose their view or gain traffic or competition to see a GP. They no longer believe that their friends or family will get the benefit of housing. Austerity, in my view, has exacted a high price, leaving communities more vulnerable to a changing world. And while some candidates might benefit from that in the short term, the sand beneath their feet will shift just as surely in the future. So my premise today is that in this political environment, social value not only makes sense, but indeed that it is an invaluable tool. part because it helps to create prosperity, but because it is rooted in people's basic sense of place. It is rooted in their reality. And that's maybe even more important in a place like mine in Rotherham. We're a borough of 276,000 people in South Yorkshire, a place with a proud industrial past built on steel, coal and engineering. But for too long, too many people in our town have felt like the future was slipping away from them. That opportunity was something that happened elsewhere to other people. There's a danger of me going all 4 Yorkshiremen on you, but just in brief, our challenges in a column: a quarter of our residents of working age are economically inactive. A third of those are living with long-term illness or disability. Our unemployment rate is higher than the national average, and 15% of our residents have no qualifications at all, locking them out of well-paid work and into cycles of poverty. Deindustrialisation famously robbed places like Rotherham of the security of heavy industry. And even as we meet today, 700 jobs in Rotherham at Liberty Steel hang in the balance after it was misused by its billionaire owner on the other side of the world. Our high streets, like many across the country, have seen this astonishing decline in retail. In Rotherham's case, that's particularly acute because our town centre faces more competition from other centres within a 40-mile radius than anywhere else in the country. And as the cost of living crisis has hit hard, the cost and availability of housing has spiralled, and more people than ever before have found themselves without a roof over their heads in our borough. But we've also seen something else. We've seen resilience. We've seen pride. And the collapse of old certainties might create new fears and worries, but they also open up new opportunities. We've been successful in securing over £100 million of public investment over the last few years. We've reopened a cinema in our town centre for the first time in decades. We're building more new council homes than at any time since the 1970s. But my sense remains that if those things just drop out of nowhere, then we've not begun to address the 2 challenges that I set out at the beginning. And that's where social value comes in. In Rotherham in 2019, we adopted our local social value policy, choosing to use the power we had through spending and contracts and our influence to change the course of our town. We brought in Cllr to analyse the local market, and they told us that wealth was leaking out of our borough, ending up in big firms in big cities. And through our social value policy, we combined progressive procurement with community wealth building. We paid all our employees the real living wage and lifted the incomes of 3,000 low-paid staff. We gave social value provision a 20% weighting in our procurement decisions. And in our context, we've been increasingly ruthless that our social value focuses heavily on employment and skills. Because good jobs don't just fill pockets, they build confidence. They reduce crime, they improve health, and they change lives. And when the social value portal revised your TOMs last year, we took the opportunity again to narrow down those priorities. So our suppliers are really clear about what matters to us. And we're seeing the impact. In our last reporting year, we've increased the social value commitments delivered through our contracts from £8 to £12 million. The commitments secured on new contracts have risen from 27 to 32 million. We've secured more than 1,800 training weeks. That's 35 years worth of training. £1.5 million dedicated hours to support young people into work. £178,000 donated to our local voluntary and community organisations. Local spend has risen by 175% in the last year alone, generating more than £19 million of economic value through our supply chains. We've plenty more to do, but by being systemic, we're regularly spending more than £30 million extra in our local economy each year. And for full-time workers, our real living wage commitment meant more than £1,200 more in their pockets this year than last. But as you know, behind all those numbers are stories. Social value means that our Riverside Gardens project, our town centre public realm project, connecting the town centre with our new cinema, provided 66 weeks of apprenticeships, 19 weeks of work experience, and a community garden at a facility supporting housing for men experiencing homelessness and alcohol misuse. Our partners provided more than £8,000 worth of materials and labour, working with students from a local college to regenerate the garden. Social value meant that the beds were raised, vegetables were grown, and the gap between education and employment was bridged. There's the designer working on our small sites council house building programme, who donated £12,000 of clothing, food and equipment to a local charity supporting homeless adults. There's the ex-offenders mentored and provided with support by our waste management company, helped back into work and society. And it helps our young people like Ellie. Ellie joined one of the firms who carry out repairs to our housing stock straight from school. And she was 16 and nervous and shy and inexperienced. And within the first 3 months, she was taking responsibility for tasks. And within the first 18 months, she'd passed all her exams and was responsible for a fleet of 100 vehicles. 19 long-term unemployed people have been hired through our policy. Not the biggest statistic you'll hear today, but it is perhaps one of the most important. 19 Rotherham people working hard in small businesses across the borough, providing for themselves and their families, transformed by the dignity of work. This is, for me, what social value is, and it's what you do. It's not just lines in a contract, it's pounds in pockets, food in fridges, and confident young people. It is a real economy, delivering in the real world. Through our local labour policy, we're challenging major developers through the planning process to face up to the need to take on local staff and engage with local communities, so that building development should never just arrive without a tangible benefit. If you walk past our markets and central library redevelopment today, the hoardings proudly announce the jobs and training created as a result. As one resident told us, it's like someone's bothered about us again. We've asked the team from the Social Value Portal to work with us to support our other anchor institutions across our Rotherham partnership to extend the same kind of approach to procurement. Alongside the support we've had from the Social Value Portal, we've expanded our in-house team to analyse the local market and ensure we support firms to deliver their social value commitments. These should not just be commitments on paper, they must be realised. And the team raises awareness of upcoming opportunities, supports our procurement team, and works with other anchor institutions across the borough to embed social value in their procurement strategies. And it pays off. For our local hospital trust, it's meant more than 60 jobs for local residents and more work experience for students. In our GP surgeries, apprenticeships, jobs and career support for young people. So it's not just us who make a difference, the NHS, the police, our brilliant local businesses. We estimate that £53.5 million worth of social value could be unlocked if we properly engage those anchor institutions and their spending power. And in a place like mine, where budgets are tight and firms face barriers, more than £50 million of benefits can be transformative. Local spend means that our local businesses can compete in competitive markets rather than always feeling that the system is rigged against them. It's not just about procurement. Our local Chamber of Commerce supports social value by hosting joint events with a consultancy Go for Growth to raise awareness and confidence amongst our SMEs. We started working with them in April last year, funding their services so that small local businesses can access specialist support and guidance for free. And their support is invaluable to firms navigating what I suspect we all know is the complicated world of public sector procurement. And increasingly, Voluntary Action Rotherham, the representative body for local voluntary and community sector, acts as our brokerage, joining the dots between firms and communities. This year, we're taking forward cooperative development, helping freelancers and community groups to start co-ops and encouraging businesses to sell to their employees when they retire. We provide free expert advice to business owners thinking of leaving their firms and work closely with other employee firms from across the north to raise awareness. And we're looking at how we can use cooperatives to reimagine the way that we provide services, including working with care commissioners to redesign the way that home care is provided. Too often in places like Rotherham, the ownership of and the return on capital lies elsewhere. And we can't regulate our way out of that. We've got to grow our way out of that. Of course, social value in and of itself can't solve all the challenges that we face. It won't resolve the information vortex on its own, but it can and it does help us to meet people where they live, to create a system that makes more sense and delivers more benefits. Alongside devolution, alongside additional investment, alongside changing the way we work with our residents, it's a valuable way to meet this moment of uncertainty. And let me just finish on a thought for Rotherham. Because with all our challenges, we have a new mainline station in the offing. Our town centre regeneration and investment in our public realm is underway. We're building thousands of new homes. We're securing the franchising of our local bus network, and we're helping more people to get back in work. So following this method, instead of confusion and decline, working with you, we can choose to own a better future together. Thank you.
Great. That's fantastic, Chris. Thanks so much. Can you hear me, by the way, Chris? Am I coming through?
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Excellent. So let's ask all the panelists to join. I just think that, and if anyone has any questions for later in the session, we'll monitor the Q&A later. We've got a conversation now with the panelists in just a moment. But Chris, I just picked up on a couple of things you mentioned, which I thought was really interesting. I love the fact that you're bold enough to go to the 20% weighting. You talk about ruthless around social value. I talk about the word bold, actually. I think which I think is really important. But there's something that I in particular picked up was really interesting, is that somehow through this social value journey with people like Ellie and others, you're proving that you as politicians are bothered about people who live locally. I think there's something about how we use social value, especially in the political sphere, to show that we care, to show that we're bothered, that it's not just a number. I thought that was a really powerful sort of a statement, but it's important. So look, I'm going to pass to you as a chair, and I think we've got two. Do we have all our? I think we've got all of our cabinet and people here. I'll just quickly. We've got Councillor Stephen Gray, who's a member of Durham County Council, and he's Reform Party. Welcome. We have Councillor Bob Slade for the Conservatives from Solihull Metropolitan Council. We have Councillor Gavin McLauchlan from Oxfordshire County Council. He is the Green Party. We have Councillor Jilly Julian, who's Lib Dem from Stockport, quite relatively close to you, Chris, just other side. And then we have Councillor Clyde Loakes, who is from Waltham Forest, and who's a deputy leader at Waltham South Forest. So, Chris, I'm going to pass on to you to chair the panel discussion, and then I'll come in towards the end. I'll monitor the Q&A and see if we can bring any audience questions in. Please drop your questions in the Q&A, everybody. Over to
Fabulous.
you.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you. Can I just check? I can't see Bob. I can't see Bob's name on my screen. So before I try and call him in, let me check if he's not there. Maybe he'll turn up as we go along, but at least we'll not be left hanging. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to our cross-party discussion. I'm delighted that we've got representatives from 4 at least of the 5 big parties, if you will, in the country here this morning. Please do, as the Guy has said, drop your questions into the Q&A. We'll have some discussion between ourselves first, and then we'll take as many questions from the floor as we possibly can. And to reiterate what I said to my colleagues last week, please do pick away at what I've said. I think we should try and find some agreement where we can, but it wouldn't be a party political debate without having some disagreement, some different views between us. So please do feel free. I said I would give everybody on the panel a couple of moments just to introduce themselves and say how they came to be here. So if that's all right with everybody, I'll do them in the order that they appear on my screen. Gavin, can I start with you?
You certainly can. Good morning, everybody. My name's Gavin McLauchlan. I'm a double hatter. I'm an Oxfordshire Green County Councillor, and I'm also a parish councillor in Benson. I've only really recently become involved in anything to do with politics. I basically got so frustrated locally that I had to stand for parish because nothing was happening. And then, having stood for parish, our county council wasn't doing anything at all, and I was actively encouraged to stand for the Green Party. So, and then I won the election, so here I am. My previous background is really in business, so I've got background in TV platform launches and in data strategy. Now, I'm particularly interested in social value, having met the guys at the LGA conference in Liverpool. and was really interested in what they had to say, especially as I'd done some work previously in ESG, which kind of frustrated me because there's no standard measurement and doesn't seem to be a cohesive platform in which to look at. And then I looked at our Oxfordshire vision statement. I noticed, Chris, that you've got yours in the background. Ours says, make Oxfordshire a greener, fairer and healthier county where everyone can take advantage of its opportunities and live happy, healthy, safe and successful lives. That's a laudable approach and a laudable vision to have, but also this needs to be measurable. And we in Oxfordshire are really just at the foothills of all of this. We haven't been engaged for a very long period of time. We've just started to employ people who actually know about social value, and that will drive matters forward. But it really is the case of we're looking to others, yourselves, as to what you've done and how you approach these, the social value element. Chris, you mentioned a few things in your lead-in. I'll come on to those as we talk about things as we go along. But there were certainly resonances there with what we're going through here. Thank you.
Marvellous, thank you. Gavin, I know this doesn't necessarily feel like it when you're new, but don't underestimate the impact of, I was really irritated by the people who came before me, and how I thought they weren't doing the right things is a motivating factor for all of us, I suspect.
Well, Chris, they basically did nothing.
No,
They didn't answer emails, didn't answer phone calls, they were never there. And it was like, really? You're meant to be a link in government. And that just really, really annoyed me. So.
Quite right, too. Quite right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Clyde, can I come to you? A man with more local government experience and pedigree.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and nice to see you. And I won't mention Rotherham beating Leighton Orient at the weekend. Okay, thanks for inviting me along today. I've been a councillor in Waltham Forest since 1998, so I can't remember the people that came before me, Gavin. So, but the thing that still gets me out of bed every day and gets me doing the things that I want to do is to continue to improve the lives and experiences and opportunities of my residents here in Waltham Forest. So for us, social value, I mean, I've been around the block on social value. I remember when it wasn't actually called social value, but I remember us talking about social value many, many years ago, but not necessarily understanding how to deliver social value or how to pull those levers. But I'm grateful over kind of more recent years that certainly Waltham Forest has begun to understand the potential and the levers that it has at its control to start levering in that social value into the lives of our residents and our communities here in Waltham Forest. And I've then used that experience with one of my other hats, which is the chair of the North London Waste Authority, to involve them in the construction of our new energy recovery facility to introduce some significant social value outcomes there too. But for us as an administration in Waltham Forest, social value really underpins our values and our commitments in terms of improving the lives of our residents, and it underpins our approach to inclusive growth, reducing inequalities, and building community resilience in some, as Chris has alluded to, some very interesting times that we exist in any form of government. But for me, it's not necessarily about the numbers that we can all reel off, whether it's the millions of pounds or it's the actual numbers of apprenticeships or training opportunities or increases in pay. It's actually about the stories of the lives of people that have been impacted by our approach to social value. It sells the value of social value to next generation politicians, next generation residents, and it changes the lives of households dramatically and the opportunities for particularly our young people moving forward. But it also creates some focus on some of the challenges that we all face in our communities, whether it's the kind of growing impact of dementia. And we've got some experience of working with some of our contractors around kind of putting the spotlight on dementia and improving the training opportunities for volunteers around working in that space, breaking down the barriers of digital exclusion for some of our older residents as well. So it is, a huge number of stories that really underpin social value here in Waltham Forest, and continue to sell it to make it the norm rather than an exception. And I guess my hope is that at some point in the future, there will be no need for social value conferences of any description, because it's just the normal thing that we all do, and we're all reaping the benefits in our local communities. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Clyde. Thank you for the 3 points at the weekend. I'd forgotten about that, but goodness knows we need them this season. So anything you can do, see if the return leg. Can I come to Stephen? Stephen, one of the newly elected Reform administration in County Durham.
Yes, thank you, Chris, and nice to be here today. And yes, it's nice to hear certainly what you were saying earlier, Chris, and what Gavin and Clyde had also said. It all resonates, and you can see there's a hell of a lot of activity going on around social value. But yes, at Durham, I've in at the deep end, as they say, very much like what Gavin has described. I'm a double-headed councillor. Elected in May to Durham County Council, but also to my local town council as well. And as they say, all of the problems that you then inherit as a new councillor, it's very nice to actually get quickly involved in social value in Durham, because it is definitely the silver lining of all the other challenges that you face and that we all face in our sort of daily lives. But so I've got the cabinet portfolio, which includes procurement and obviously the social value associated with all of that. And it's been a really interesting experience over the first few months of the administration to actually get close to some of the activities that's been going on in social value, and whether that's from sort of seeing real stuff, because I think as Clyde said, we have got lots of numbers, and I may well reel some of those numbers off, because County Durham have done some great things with their County Durham Pound initiative, and it's been award-winning. It's been very successful over a number of years, and we have some great examples of things that have been done in social value, and it's definitely got a head of steam. But it's actually nice to make it real and see things at a very local level. And my first introduction was actually going to a local boxing club and actually seeing what had been transformed with the work of private sector and public sector working together to actually literally take a building that was deserted and empty for years, and in a matter of sort of 12 months, it's been turned into a community boxing centre. And to actually see young people sort of come in that had no facilities at all, to actually come in and see the energy associated with that, that's the real outcome, I think, of social value. And there's many examples like that in Durham that sort of come around, and it's a real pleasure, I think, going forward. So I think I was very keen to sort of join this conference, because I think we're going to struggle to fall out over social value. We can try it, I think, but I think we will struggle to fall out, because it just makes such good sense. And part of our agenda really is to at Durham is to really sort of make sure communities aren't left behind, and social value has a massive role to play in this. And it's also, and as Clyde had said, we don't. Maybe we will get to a future where there aren't any social value conferences, but I actually think they're really great, because it's great to hear the stories, not only of what's happened, but also the passion actually of businesses that want to be involved in it. This is not a forced thing that's coming from a public sector procurement process. It's businesses and people want to do it. And I think the challenge going forward, as we'll get into, I'm sure, is to try and harness that power and make it work for public and community good. So it's a great opportunity that's presented to all of us, I think. And looking forward to saying more about it, Chris.
Well, thank you very much. Jilly, can I come to you?
You certainly can, Chris. Thank you. Morning, everyone. My name's Julian, and I feel like I'm kind of in the newbie gang in terms of length of service here. having been elected as a councillor for the first time 4 years ago here in Stockport. 2 years after that, I took on the cabinet brief for finance and resource. And my origin story is surprisingly similar to those that have been mentioned already. There's a point where you stop shouting at the telly and you stop wondering where your representation might be, or wondering how you can exercise that sense of needing to contribute to making the world a better place. And for those of us who were of more of an activist tendency, it seems to be a slippery slope from there into an elected local government role, which, let's face it, is an absolute privilege. And my cautionary tale is that I've now become the deputy leader in Stockport on that reasonably short time scale, which again is an absolute privilege and means that I get to really get into the bones of where things like social value can make a colossal difference in our communities. Stockport is a really polarised borough. From a socioeconomic perspective, we have both the most affluent and most deprived areas of the northwest within our borough, and that presents us with lots of challenges. It presents us with challenges in terms of local government financing. It presents us with challenges in terms of how we can support the community groups that are doing such fantastic work to enable what we want to happen for our most vulnerable residents. We are blessed though with being a really thriving town in terms of our economic alliance, our VCFSE alliance, and I see social value being kind of the middle of the Venn diagram in terms of local government looking out for our residents, our economic alliance, our VCFSE alliance, and there's this lovely space in the middle where social value stops being just about those numbers. And I completely agree with the point that Clyde made. It's sometimes the numbers don't actually translate into a story. They don't necessarily resonate with the difference that social value can really make to the people who need it to. So it's that lovely space in the middle of the Venn diagram that we get to explore that I'm sure we're going to dive into a little bit more today. For my sins, I'm also currently this year the chair of Star Procurement Joint Committee. That's a body that brings together Stockport, Tameside, Trafford, Rochdale, Knowsley and St Helens in a collaborative approach to procurement that has made our social value opportunities really amplify. And we're also in Stockport part of, well, we were kind of front runners in terms of mayoral development corporation across Greater Manchester, which combines the economic opportunities that we've got in terms of regeneration with Greater Manchester's opportunities and that mayoral support. And we've been able to really expedite our town centre regen, but again, in a way that is minded towards all of the benefits that that can drive, not purely in terms of the infrastructure, but in terms of the benefits back into our communities, which again has been a really helpful platform to be able to push what we can do from a social value perspective.
Chris has been in and out during this.
He has a little, hasn't he?
Yeah. Chris, are you there?
I am. It keeps throwing me out, so I didn't know what it was.
We're waiting for our leader to give us guidance and ask us questions. Oh, he's gone again.
Perhaps just ask Stephen to go next. No, Stephen. Guy? Who's the next speaker? Who hasn't spoke?
Guy, you're muted.
I think it'd be Guy.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, there's Chris. There's Chris.
I keep being kicked out because it keeps saying my link is being used. So if I disappear again,
I'll be there to step in. It's fine.
Could it be that our missing member is actually trying to access via your link, Chris?
it is possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
It did seem it that way. Perhaps Tom, perhaps in the background you can just chase up the the missing member, just make sure that he's using the right link. Yeah, he's
on
doing
it.
the thing. Yeah, he's on it. Okay, Chris, back to you.
Fabulous, thank you. Well, did I catch that Jilly was talking about Stockport's redevelopment to fill out some time there? Was that whilst I was missing? Well, I'm sorry I missed that now, but thank you very much anyway. I mean, it is, you know, I wanted to say on the call, if anybody who's not seen it, Stockport's regeneration in the middle of the town there is absolutely remarkable, and doubtless benefiting from proximity to the city of Manchester, but it really is worth going and seeing. So, you know, I think for many of us, learning about the social value advantages of that is something that we ought to be all taking some inspiration from, really. On that sort of note, Clyde, I wonder if a place like Waltham Forest, with plenty of challenges but plenty of opportunities, sitting in a London context, how does that affect the approach that you're making? You face all the challenges of London's higher prices and the housing crisis in our capital, but also the benefits of growth that you've clearly brought to Waltham Forest. I wondered if you could reflect on that for us a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the challenges of London is that, you know, the counties can come into London and the rest of London can come into Waltham Forest. So you are constantly trying to, you know, in a kind of leadership role, trying to, you know, prioritize your residents in those kind of procurement exercises, whether it's for kind of goods or services or in terms of kind of contracts, you know, because, you know, Essex is on our doorstep, you know, and they have challenges and they have communities that they're constantly seeking to kind of, you know, better, you know, and, you know, it's easy to get into Waltham Forest from Essex. Newham will quite readily want to kind of access. So it becomes quite a fight, really, to ensure that in all of these social value interactions, you are securing the best for your residents, your communities, your neighbourhoods. And I think, you know, it's been testament to some of the work that we've done either at Waltham Forest or at the North London Waste Authority, in that we have prioritised and sought to prioritise our communities, our residents, with the social value that we can achieve through some of these interactions with some of our players, whether it's some of the big players, the big contractors, or whether it's some of the smaller, you know, service providers that we've started to bring in to deliver some of our goods and services over recent years. But, you know, you have to be aware, and you've got to be on your game all the time, because there are other people snapping at your heels to seek those benefits and, you know, to do the best for their communities as well.
And I think I was reading when I was researching for this session, something like, is it 99% of businesses in Waltham Forest are small businesses, which isn't, of course, necessarily how those of us from a long way away think of London. That must pose particular sort of challenges, but also opportunities in terms of your social value, how you shift your spend into those local companies.
Yeah, there's that, but, you know, you also have some big contractors that are providing services to, whether it's Waltham Forest, it's the local NHS family, TfL. So, you know, they are operating within the place. So it's not always just kind of people that have a relationship directly with Waltham Forest. It's how you hear about, you know, Thames Water doing a big contract, doing a big piece of infrastructure work, and how you lever in, you find a way to get into those conversations, because if they're spending £400 million over 5 years on a big infrastructure project, you want some of that action for your residents and citizens, and you're going to find a way to do that. But the other thing about having some of those bigger players operating in and around Waltham Forest is you can also lever in, you know, some kind of knowledge, experience, to some support to some of those new and emerging small businesses that we're seeking to grow within Waltham Forest and find a home within Waltham Forest, because, you know, potentially they are the future employers if they could scale up going forward. So, you know, there is that sharing of knowledge and understanding. So it is important that we continue to make Waltham Forest relevant to our very small business base, small in kind of, you know, employer terms business base, to you know, and linking them with some of those bigger players, because that's where, you know, they will learn and hopefully grow from.
Fabulous, thank you. Stephen, can I come to you? And I'm genuinely interested in this as the new administration coming in County Durham. County Durham, of course, a community not that dissimilar to Rotherham in terms of some of the history and the challenges that your communities and mine will have faced. And you've taken on this big job. The finance portfolio is never the one I would be racing for, I've got to say, with some of the challenges that we're facing. Tell us a little bit about what you found in terms of the social value approach, the Durham pound approach in your part of the world. And from your early observations, what it is that you think is working and what it is that ought to change over the next few years.
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, the County Durham pound. It's something nice to inherit coming in as a newly elected sort of councillor and administration, because it's you know, Durham have clearly made a fantastic head start over the last 4 or 5 years, and you know, they've got awards to sort of show how well they've developed with. And I won't list off all of the statistics, or at least not yet anyway, but they have got quite a lot to shout about, and so I wouldn't want to sort of hide their achievements too much. But you know, it's I'll throw in one that I think is really important, which is sort of crossing the £1 billion mark in terms of social value contribution across the communities, and so it has really got a good head of steam, and I think you can sort of see there's many projects that's actually been out there that's made a difference. But I think a lot of the conversations we've had more recently is about how do we actually really take it to the next level going forward, because as we said, and as Clyde has said, you know, you can throw statistics at these things, and there's many positive statistics you can throw at this, but how do you actually take it forward? How do you continue the momentum that's been made? And how do you actually really embed that within communities and make a difference? And for all of the great things that's going on with social value, would be my observation, there's still a lot of awareness raising that's required. But small businesses are still trying to sort of understand exactly what social value means to them. Big businesses with more capacity are clearly more geared up and have more of a track record of it. So I think a lot of it is sort of working with different organizations to actually help them to understand more of what is required. I'm particularly interested in exploring exactly how social value fits with lots of other community activities. And as I said at the start, and as you've highlighted there, Chris, you know, Durham has lots of social deprivation issues, particularly in the eastern side of the county, and I think social value has got a big thing to play in all of this. But how do we link all of this together, from whether it's sort of neighbourhood budgets run by councillors, whether it's we have community local area network groups that are looking to sort of fund projects. We have Section 106, we have social value, we have volunteer organisations. What's the best way to coordinate this? Now, for me, this is one of the big challenges going forward, because social value has such a big part to play in all of this. And how do we get a bigger bang for our buck, really, by saying, well, if we could link some of this neighbourhood budget together with Section 106 with social value, we could really make a big difference within communities. And it's going to take a little bit to try and sort of pick that apart and try and reassemble it in a way that is positive. I think a lot of it is about raising awareness, though, both in terms of what communities can do in terms of developing the ideas and opportunities for social value, but also how we can harness and challenge and channel sort of the businesses that want to do the social value into these areas as well. And the last County Durham Pound conference I attended, which was only last month actually, whilst we celebrated lots and lots of great achievements, a lot of organisations still want to understand where the opportunities are. So the willingness is there. How do we actually channel that willingness into really practical things in communities that really do make a difference? And I think that's the big next step challenge going forward, about trying to coordinate this, raise the profile even further, and make it the norm, as one of the panelists said earlier. You know, this should feel like something that people immediately think about. It's not something. It's not a couple of words that's sort of thrown in about social value. People should immediately understand what this is about. So I think for me that's probably the biggest challenge going forward for Durham, Chris, about how we embed this, how do we coordinate this, and how do we make sure that that momentum that is clearly there from many organisations isn't lost and doesn't wither on the vine at all.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, actually, about how you really maximise the local benefit of that. That there are a number of kind of local funding streams or issues through planning gain or whatever it might be, neighbourhood budgets that you reference, and how that gets joined up to give maximum benefit. I reflected a little bit in terms of the work that our voluntary sector organisations are doing to join up those opportunities as they come in from business. But I think for all of us, I would guess that is an area that we've got to develop on to make it make sense out in communities. Gavin, can I come to you? We've been quite cosy so far. We seem to be largely in agreement. Bring us a perspective, and you have the advantage of, if I can say so, of not being responsible for running a council, and carrying that weight with you. So tell us, and perhaps particularly from a green perspective, what needs to change? What's the approach that we should be bringing?
So the interesting thing here is, as Stephen said before, we are all in violent agreement. And actually listening to you guys, a lot of what you say is equally applicable to the area where I am, Oxfordshire. We surprisingly have some very deprived areas. And the biggest issue I think that we have at the moment is that we're kind of in limbo. So you probably all know that we've got the big unitary question hanging over us as to which way we're going to go, whether it's going to be an Oxfordshire based unitary or whether it's going to be split up into different sections. And I think without the unitary, the social value question becomes a lot harder, because you've got a lot of the things that I would like to influence personally being held at district level. So you've got the waste disposal, you've got the building planning that sits all down there, and we have no part to play in that at all. Whereas I think if you look at social value and what it can do, certainly in terms of the whole building programs, there's a lot that we should be doing that we're not doing currently. And that might be as simple as ensuring that all new houses have solar panels on their roofs, or they have ground source heating, so they are future resistant, as opposed to now where I look at my area where I'm parish, we've literally doubled the size of our village and only the very, very new houses there have solar panels. And I'd be looking to really drive that into everything we do. But the interesting thing as well out of all of this is that it's all about communities. We are, as a party, I never thought I'd say that, all about community. We care a lot about them. And Guy, when he said, this is all about showing that we care, that's key. But we live in an environment locally where we've got lots of St. George's flags up. I don't know whether you guys have it. And nobody knows what the hell to do about it, because if you take them down, you get council staff being attacked. That's not great. If you take them down, some residents are really happy, others are not so happy. So there are lots of different challenges that we altogether face. And I think the other big one that has been slightly touched on in the conversation so far is the whole send piece. Because up and down the UK, send is an increasing cost across every council, as far as I understand. And I believe that the overspend in send, based on figures that I've seen, is approaching 7 billion across the UK. So when Rachel Reeves talks about us having a deficit of 14 billion, the figure's actually in reality higher. And actually caring for those people and making sure that their education is done correctly and finding the school places and getting them in some cases to those schools is a really big issue around here. And equally, we have quite a few air bases, which are an interesting mix all of their own, because these children tend to be traveling quite a lot. They might be in Cyprus, they might be in Oxfordshire, they might be wherever, and they have, again, interesting educational facets to their makeup, which also brings about an increase in the SEND requirements. So for us in Oxfordshire, we've got the same melange of challenges, I think, that all of you have, and we are, I think, maybe slightly hampered until the whole unitary question is resolved. Now we're going to have an idea on which way that goes as of next month, but then it's going to be a few years until that actually comes into practice. So we'll be effectively in a holding pattern. So for us, I think it's more about doing what we can do. And Stephen, to your point, our commits in terms of social value are about 422 million at the moment, nowhere near the 1 billion that you've already achieved. So, and we're, like I said before, we're only in the foothills there. We've covered about 2% in total of those commitments. So for us, it's really early days. But for me, in a world where, and again, Stephen, you'll appreciate this, budgets are increasingly limited, I think for us to be able to show that we care, going back to Guy's point, and deliver for our constituents, it's really important that we can demonstrate these gains across all the areas that we're looking at. So this is jobs, growth in support and supporting SMEs, the green economy, social and vibrant communities, tackling climate change, and innovation and encouraging social innovation. All these things matter. It's just a matter of how do we make those work in this interim period. That's our big challenge, I would say. I hope that answers your question, Chris.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you, Gavin. And certainly a lot of familiar challenges, I think, for all of us there. Interesting what role our kind of social value commitments can make around that, and how much we'd just like some more public money to come and fix some of those problems for us, frankly.
Yep.
I'm conscious we've got about 25 minutes left. We've got quite a few questions coming in, so I'm going to pick out one or two, and then perhaps if panelists can volunteer for the ones. Jilly, I'm conscious I've not asked you anything yet, so perhaps I might look to you to go first, if that's all right. But two questions that kind of jump out that I think we might be able to help with. So Laura asks about how can we ensure that social value isn't just another buzzword that's buried in a strategy and becomes a real driver for action and impact. And then perhaps alongside that, Christine has a question about what initial work was done to identify what your social value priorities should be in your local authority area. They feel quite complementary to me. So Jilly, can I come to you first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think stopping social value just being a strapline is absolutely key. And I think this is where making it tangible, making sure that that awareness is there. Now, Stephen referred to raising awareness amongst the business community particularly. I would argue that awareness of social value and understanding of social value also needs to be driven through our procurement teams, including our council officer population, our procurement teams, contract managers, our commissioners, anybody who has that role to play should have that understanding of social value and where it can really add. I think some of the benefit that we see working across our STAR partners is that we get to leverage the economies of scale that come with STAR, but the focus is very much on delivering local spend and local value. So you're driving that local economic activity as well as generating social value commitments. And I think also key to making that real is being able to drive the delivery of those commitments and understanding that that in itself demands some focus and resource, because making the commitments may be the easy part for some of those organisations who are pledging wonderful resources, time, funding, but actually driving that through over the completion of a particularly long contract, for example, might be the trick. I think that does, however, mean a world of opportunity. I mean, here in Stockport, we use a platform known as Match My Project, where we actually have it's almost like a brokerage service where local community groups, right down to I want to get my shed painted so for this youth group to be able to house their equipment, right through to really significant employment and skills opportunities with work experience at a major law firm in the area or whatever it might be. There's a place to go to find out about how your organisation could be contributing to Stockport's social value. So I think across the kind of the partnership working at a wider geographical level, but also the local mechanisms that we've got, we've made it tangible. And I think making it tangible is the thing that is really, really supportive there. And in terms of that initial work done to identify priorities, so to my mind, everything should feed back to our borough plan, our council plan. And because our Economic Alliance and our VCFSE Alliance have been an integral part of that, there's a common language for what is the priority for Stockport's residents. And that common language is really, really helpful. I think, again, alongside that, working with staff procurement and having them involved in those conversations too, that kind of base language is there all the way through. So our starting point is always our communities, and it's making sure that when it comes to our social value priorities, that working with our key community groups, our brilliant kind of one Stockport community of organisations, it's not the wrong way around. It's that kind of ground up view of what's going to make the most tangible difference across our communities, because that means that we can drive the right focus, but then again we can drive that delivery of social value, because like I said, I think that is the flip side of the opportunity that we've got that does need some tangible focus. And I would say actually having dedicated roles looking at social value and having that kind of explicit focus on making sure that the strategy is right, that everything is aligned, that the right people are talking, and that value is being driven throughout the life of the contract is just, that's the thing that's made the difference for us.
Brilliant. Clyde, can I direct some of those questions to you as well in terms of how you identify those priorities? Jilly's point around borough plan or council plan, there'll be slightly different terminology in different places, seems really important to me, that your social value priorities should match your priorities for the organisation, for the place.
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. That's what we've done in Waltham Forest. I mean, social value priorities, match our political ambition and priorities for Waltham Forest as a place. It's reflected in our corporate plan, our local place. It ripples through, as it rightly should, the entirety of the organisation, the things that it directly delivers or it commissions or facilitates or works in partnership to deliver. There was just a point earlier though. I mean, I guess for us in Waltham Forest, each of the cabinet members, each of our directors, has social value as something we are constantly seeking to kind of, drive out, lever in, however you want to kind of frame it in all of our activities. And I think that's quite important for us as an organisation, that it is embedded across the organisation. It's not siloed into one part of the organisation to kind of constantly be championing and seeking it out. We all kind of wear our social value colours on our sleeves. So that's really, really important. I guess our starting point though was kind of trying to, and it's had a number of iterations, social value for many years now. It's, let's not kid ourselves, it's not suddenly a new fangled flash thing. There'll be some pioneers in this conference that have been around the block even perhaps longer than I have on this. But a starting point was kind of mapping out, who we had in our borough that could potentially do something in this space. and then, you know, mapping out, you know, what some of our challenges were, and then trying to kind of match up those kind of two maps and layer them over so that we could identify, you know, who was in the right place to perhaps support some of the right outcomes that we wanted to achieve in some of our communities, or, you know, voluntary sector organizations, or some of our small businesses, and then constantly refreshing that because the world moves really, really fast now, really fast. And, you know, and what may have been a good priority and a good use of social value, you know, 2 years ago may not be what you want kind of for the next 2 years, and you may need to lever in some different players to help you achieve what's coming up on the horizon for the next 2 years. So it is a fast moving place to be operating in. But I like to think that Waltham Forest is kind of agile enough, and some of the players that we have the privilege of working with to deliver our social value agenda, whether they be the big contractors, or some of our smaller businesses, or some of the smaller voluntary community sector, are also in that place because they recognise the value of it all moving forward, and the difference that they are making day in, day out to the lives of so many of our residents in Waltham Forest.
Fabulous. Thank you both very much. Stephen, at risk of trying to break the cosy consensus, our top voted question by our audience this morning is directed to you, and I want to put it to you and let you stand your ground a little bit on the question this morning. So the question that's coming is: given your party's public stance on cutting public spending and scrapping diversity and inclusion laws, how do you plan to deliver measurable social value outcomes in those communities? I suppose first and foremost, do you think that's a fair assessment of your party's platform? And then tell us a little bit about the interaction between the national and the local from your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting sort of line around cutting public spending. I think, you know, obviously reform was sort of elected around the country in the last elections around trying to get better value for money rather than just simply cutting spending. I think, I mean, that is for the reasons that's been sort of highlighted in terms of sort of send costs that are running out of control nationally, and costs around care generally, which is probably, I think if we did a sort of a sample across the councils represented today, we'll probably all agree it's probably the core spending of most councils nowadays, and particularly in socially deprived areas such as County Durham. It's more about making the money go further in a better way. So I think when we talk about cutting public spending, we're really talking about making sure we're targeting our spending in the correct way. I mean, there's no doubt that, you know, Durham itself spends £1 billion a year on its procurement, and you know, that drives a lot of social value, by the way, which is a good thing. But also we need to make sure we maximise our value for money as well. So it's a very delicate balance actually around how do we make sure we sort of secure the very best contracts for our communities and for our services, but also how do we make sure that we do them in a way that we end up with the right partners that provide the right levels of motivations to want to do things with social value. And so I think that's really the challenge. I think it's much more around focus on communities, I would say. You know, we can sort of look at particular sort of statements and things around diversity and inclusion and that, but actually I'd rather refocus that and say we want to make sure communities aren't left behind. And you know, I think Durham is quite a dispersed county. It has lots of small towns and villages. It's very easy for those towns and villages to be left behind, and we think they have been left behind. So this is where my interest in trying to sort of unite neighbourhood budgets, Section 106, social value, and all of these things together so we can actually make it all go a little further. I think there's also opportunities to actually help with particularly high spend areas around SEND and around children in care. And you know, we've had some really great examples of that in our recent social value conference in Durham last month, about how kids leaving care can actually really contribute to the community. So we're 100% in favour of really focusing on communities and supporting communities and trying to rethink how councils actually do spend their money. There's certain things that are just simply unavoidable costs in terms of spend, and I think it's causing it's a really big national issue, and of course it's a massive issue for Durham, and there's not a lot we can actually do about that. We've just got to suck it up in terms of the spending that's going into that, but there's other opportunities to actually transform, and it's part of my portfolio around transformation and efficiency, and I'm keen that we make every penny count in County Durham, because I think the more we can sort of reprioritize resources and really focus on making a difference to people and communities and neighbourhoods, then that's so that's really where I think we want to start direct our policies over the next few years. There's obviously a tension if you don't spend in one area you spend in another. I'm learning very quickly as a new politician that you can never please all parties, and wherever you make a decision, there's always people that support that decision, and there's probably the same number of people that oppose that decision. So you've got to make those decisions, though, and I think we're absolutely keen to emphasise that we want to support communities that are left behind, and I think that's where we're going to sort of focus our attention. And this is why I think social value has such a big part to play in all of this, Chris.
Thank you. And I mean, I think many of us will think about those equality, diversity, inclusion initiatives as precisely being about leaving no one behind in the way that you've described, actually. So, and some of us will be, I suspect, as critical as you might be about some of the more frivolous parts of that that have happened in some places, but that ability to not leave any behind, somewhere in the words behind me on the wall, I think is a really important part of what we all do in local government, isn't it?
I think absolutely it's about focusing on how we can help everybody as a whole, not just specific groups or anything like that. Everyone should have the same opportunity, and this is really what we want to do. This is what communities voted for reform for. They wanted to actually see that money was spent in a different way to help people. So that's what we want to deliver for them.
Thank you very much. There are a number of questions about SMEs and accessibility. So Christopher has put a question in about how do we make social value more accessible? The Procurement Act was keen to ensure greater engagement from local SMEs, yet social value questions are often very complicated, written in a particular argot. Ironically, or use methods hard to understand without significant training. I wondered if our panel had comments about the best ways of engaging SMEs, which, I mean, obviously some of those SMEs are very small organisations in our communities. Whether the panel had reflections on the best way of trying to close that gap. I'm looking for a volunteer, really, so I can't see you now.
I'll start off, Chris, if you want. Within Oxfordshire, we actually actively engage with SMEs to make sure they are part of the conversation. It's very key. And we also have an innovation program which encourages actually effectively startups to get involved with a program that we run, so that they actually have kind of the weight of the council behind them, but not sort of financially behind them, if you like, so that there is support, there's help, there's advice, and I think for a lot of the SMEs, I mean, you have other challenges as well. I mean, we're about to impose a congestion charge on Oxfordshire, and all of the SMEs are up in arms about it, because that's going to actually stop a lot of people going into the city itself. And bear in mind that about 75% of the population lives outside of the city, as kind of previously mentioned by Stephen. So we've got a juggling act to play here, where yes, we do want to support them, yes, we do support them, yes, we do have programs that are there to help them, but at the same time, there are, I suppose, elements which hinder, based on actually trying to make the city greener and trying to make the city less congested. So you've with all of these things, there's a quid and a sort of a pro and a con, and you have to walk the delicate balancing act between those two and make sure that you deliver as best you can for the SMEs. And we do have a huge amount of SMEs locally in Oxfordshire. Hope that helps.
Thank you. And Guy had a question in here about how do we make sure that social value is not too burdensome for SMEs. I think that's the same sort of thing about the paperwork and the reporting requirements. I don't know, Jilly, Clyde, whether you had thoughts about that, experiences in your places that that would help to support SMEs in that way.
I think in terms of this and the previous question to some extent, I think there is an opportunity missed if there isn't a degree of co-creation. So actually working with representatives from that community, from that SME population in your area, to sense check the language that's being used. As with all things local government, sometimes we can get into our own mode of language really quickly, and it's not necessarily going to be the thing that's most accessible to our community groups, to our businesses. And actually we found this working from kind of both perspectives, in terms of the community groups wanting to tap into social value opportunities, as well as businesses looking to provide the right kind of social value resources that we'd be wanting to take advantage, or that they'd be wanting to take advantage of. The language needs to work for everyone. So let's co-create. This is, and I'll chuck a party political perspective in there. There's a lot to be said for our resources and our decision making being driven down to the most local level possible. But that means that real lean into co-creation and working with at that really granular level. And there's a lot to be gained from that. And a shout out again for something like the Match My Project tool that actually takes a lot of the burden away from a community organisation side of things and can be really useful.
Fabulous, thank you. So one final one, and just welcome comments from each of the panel before we finish. Craig Minter put this question in early on, and I've been staring at it while you've been talking and trying to figure out what my answer would be. His question is, what is the consensus amongst the panelists regarding a realistic annual improvement in social value or environmental impact the country must achieve to demonstrate continuous and meaningful progress towards a better future? And I suppose I'd use that question to invite you just to reflect on your own prospects for the future, your own ambitions for the coming year in your places, and what that might look like. Give us a bit of inspiration for the days ahead in the session. Stephen, shall I come back to you first?
Okay. Yeah, I would say this is very much about trying to make it real, make social value real, and to make it as visible as possible to communities. People don't want to hear about, as Clyde has said earlier, don't necessarily want to hear about numbers and stuff. If you're sat in a community, they want to hear about, well, what's the real impact been? Is there something visible, tangible that the people can see that's actually made a difference to their everyday lives? And social value is not going to be the panacea for everything. Of course, there's lots more public spending that needs to take place to actually help people, but it has a really important role to play. So we have to use it to its full potential, and to make the most of. I like the term that Jilly just said there around co-creation. We need to sort of use social value as a lever to actually work with communities and community groups to get the best out of it, and match that with any sort of grants and budgets and support that can actually be used to make much more of an impact on the ground. And I think the acid test is to sort of keep on developing those tangible schemes that's going to make a difference.
Fabulous, thank you. Jilly, shall I come to you?
Thanks, Chris. I think for me, it's around making a start. Because what that improvement looks like depends very much on your starting point. And I think, as with many conversations around this, when we are establishing a new mode of thinking or a new approach, or something that not all of those who need to be involved may fully embrace and understand just yet, making a start and actually demonstrating some of those gains, some of those wins for everybody concerned is the thing that will make it real and will make it tangible. And I come back to the point that social value is a team sport. So we need those conversations with all concerned in the room, that element of co-creation going on there, but to be able to make a start, to be able to establish what we want this to look like. And I would say be ambitious. Yes, there is a need to be realistic about it, but be ambitious and shoot for what your communities need, and then build that awareness and build those mechanisms that will bring it all into life. And again, having that relating back to your council plan, having some resource dedicated towards this is the way to absolutely expedite some of those returns.
Well, thank you, Gavin. What bring us the benefit of your new insurgency? What should we be aiming for in the
my brief stay so far? Well, as I've said before, we're currently in the foothills. So for us in Oxfordshire, the only way is up, baby, as the song goes. There's a couple of things that Jilly said, and also Stephen, that I think we need to pay particular heed to. Firstly, you need to have people responsible. We now have those in place, which is great. Stephen also said, as did Jilly, working with the community. That is so important in all of this. And the one thing that really, really struck me, which also came from Jilly, is that the be ambitious statement. If you go through councillor training, you're always told that you should have ambition. And I think as you get involved in the running and the management of councils, you might sometimes lose that ambition or part of it along the way. I think for all of us, the key is to continue to be ambitious in our goals and our targets and to drive for them in a measurable fashion, but also one that really works with the communities that we're all tasked with looking after.
Fabulous, thank you. And Clyde, the last word for you. What do the years ahead bring?
I guess it's about who as local politicians we're talking to here, and of course as local politicians we're always keen to be talking to our residents, and our residents are the judges of what we do in this space. I guess for me is we're all starting or have been providing social value in one way, shape or form to our neighbourhoods and our communities for short periods of time or longer periods of time. But are our residents yet demanding social value from all of the things that we are involved in? I'm not too sure that that's the case. I think we have an industry, and it's been amazing to see some of the job descriptions pop up in the chat from some of the contributors to questions and stuff. I think we have an industry. I'm not too sure yet that if I went out and even now spoke to some of my residents in my neighbourhood, that they would understand that social value delivered them this, or there is an opportunity to drive more social value out, which could change the lives of looked after children in Waltham Forest forever. And their life chances. I guess in terms of realism, realism is just different to all the different lives and agendas that we are touching now with social value. So the River Ching Action Group, who just need some waders and some tubes to test what's in the local river, their realism, their achievements, is going to be vastly different to the 15-year-old who had a work experience placement at London Energy and has now got an apprenticeship with London Energy because of that kind of social value interaction. So to kind of measure all of that, I think, and to kind of create an annual and a national picture, I just think would be overly onerous. But yet we know locally, as local champions, as local politicians, we know the things that can make a difference, and we know the stuff we still need to do to ensure that this is fully embedded and within our DNA, to ensure that we're constantly striving to deliver more and driving more out of social value in everything that we do.
Brilliant. Lovely note to end on. Thank you very much. Thank you to the panel, to Gavin, Stephen, Jilly and Clyde. I hope what you've heard, colleagues, today is the pride in place, the ambition for our place and our commitment to our communities across parties this morning. And I will leave you with Jilly's wise words that social value is a team sport. She's absolutely right. And I think if that theme continues through the rest of this conference, you won't go far wrong.
Brilliant.
I'm back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris and panel. That was a fantastic panel. And I was struck, actually, as all of you mentioned, by the unity of message. It doesn't matter which sort of party you're from, and plenty, you're all representing different parties. What I heard was everyone saying that social value is a way we can deliver locally, make it real, but also ensure that people are not left behind. The one word of warning that I think is really important, that is a piece that I think Councillor Loakes made right at the end, which is just making sure that, or finding a way of communicating it to people. You know, as Councillor Loakes recognised, that lots of people talk about social value. We've got social value architects, we've got social value directors. If you were to wander into, I'm in Lambeth now, if I was to wander into Vauxhall Park and have a chat to people and say, this is what social value's done for you, they'll go, I've got absolutely no idea what you're talking about. So I think the language piece is really important for us as we go forward. Just a few statistics before I let everyone take a break. Over 720 people on this call, brilliant, listening in, absolutely fantastic sort of start off to the day, and we've got almost in total over 2,000 people now registered for the conference, not including everyone who's coming to the awards dinner in the evening. So lots going on. So please enjoy. So thanks again to Chris for leading us so well, kicking off, and then to Councillor Stephen Gray, Councillor Gavin McLauchlan from Oxfordshire, Councillor Jilly, Julian, and Councillor Clyde Loakes from Waltham Forest. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Now, if we have the next slide, Tom, just very quickly to remind you, we've got another few more sessions coming up, 4 parallel sessions. Here we go, coming up right now. We've had a first, we've had the first opening panel. So kicking off at 11 o'clock. We've got some mission critical issues that we're looking at, tackling rising child poverty. We're going to be thinking about social mobility, and we're going to be thinking about understanding the potential. And then in the afternoon, we've got a whole load of other sessions. So make sure you sign up to the events, lots going on, and enjoy. Thank you again to our opening panel. Good morning and see you later.